Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Chicago Metropolitan Agency, our board meeting. This meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees to hear, please make sure you unmute your microphone when speaking. Please identify yourself when making or sending a motion so that the secretary can capture who is making that motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. If you wish to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphone muted unless you're called upon to speak. When appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff is monitoring Zoom and will recognize you when it's your time to speak. With that in mind, Aaron, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Frank Beal, President. Oh, thank you very much, Frank.
What an entrance.
Yeah. President Brawley, Mayor Curry, Mayor Grasso, Mayor Hofert, Nina Edamudia,
Present.
Mayor Noak, President Reinbold, Mayor Rotering,
Here.
Joanna Ruiz,
Here.
Carolyn Schofield,
Here.
Ann Sheehan,
Here.
Matt Walsh,
Present.
Jung Yoon, and Kuros Mahamadian.
Here. And gentlemen, we do have a quorum, and online we need to recognize those to participate in the Zoom meeting, which is Mayor Brawley, Mayor Holford, Mayor Noak, Carolyn Schofield, and Jung Yoon.
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion to allow them to participate.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Not all in favor, signify by a vote of aye. Motion carries. Aaron.
Great. Well, welcome. Thanks, everyone. It's good to see you. This is our second to last meeting before we take a little summer break here. So we'll see you next month as well. Wanted to just briefly share a few notes of activities since we last met. Last month, I traveled to Washington, D.C. for the Coalition for America's Gateways and Trade Corridors meeting, which is a national organization. I'm the board chair this year. It marked the organization's 25th anniversary. CMAP's been a participant in this organization. As you know, it's really critical for us to be thinking about our role as a region in freight and elevating that at the national level as well. This organization at the annual anniversary celebration, heard from multimodal freight leaders. I had the opportunity to introduce Michael Rutherford, who's leading the multimodal freight office in DC under the Office of the Secretary. But throughout the dinner, I think there was a lot of emphasis on the importance of making sure that there's funding, dedicated funding for freight programs and activities across our region and others across the country. We also were able to sit down with Senator Duckworth to talk about mobility and infrastructure funding and the transportation reauthorization bill at the federal level, which, you know, there is some signs that maybe there would be a markup later this month, but still TBD on that. It expires at the end of September of this year. I also recently traveled to the Netherlands, sponsored by a series of Midwest philanthropic organizations. I was able to go learn about bicycling infrastructure, livability and affordability, and their policy perspective on investing in communities and making sure that people can get around in a multimodal way. I will say I was impressed by the level of infrastructure and commitment they had to making hard choices for decisions. For example, in new development has to have 30% of affordable, which we would call workforce housing here in the States, in order to get transportation funding for their projects. And so they had this nuanced, I think, perspective on how they were making trade-offs and thinking about their limited resources as well. So a really great and inspiring trip. I'm excited to, again, continue to share some of those findings. And it was a really good timing as it relates to our century plan development, as we want to think big and bold about the future of investments related to energy and water and transportation across our region. Just a couple things on data sets that are available here. Our My Daily Travel Survey Analysis is now available for you all. So it's on our Data Hub site. We talked to 3,500 households who participated in the survey between 2024 and 2025. And one of the things that we are trying to understand is how travel patterns have changed since the pandemic. So this is our first household travel survey since 2019. And so the phase one analysis really looks at the travel patterns alongside some of those post-pandemic shifts, which we're seeing again, continued midday travel has increased again, and that's continuing to be with us here, elevated telecommuting, and then longer than average trip lengths again. So as we're looking at some of those changes in our data and the way people are moving, I think those are three things that we're going to continue to pay attention to and make sure that we're thinking about as we're developing policy solutions. You know, we know that a longer than average trip lengths is not something that we would strive for as a policy goal here in the region. So you can find this on our website, but our staff are also available to talk with you about how this might be reflected in some local data that you are seeing as well. Also wanted to highlight too that the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding is available for hard infrastructure dollars right now. The safety action plans that we did help make every community in our region in 6 of our counties eligible for these funds to apply. Again, there's about $1 billion available nationwide to support efforts that reduce roadway fatalities and serious injuries on our transportation network. Also, just speaking of safety, our comms team received an award for our Safe Travel for All website and community engagement process. So I just wanted to highlight the good work of that team. I know the board always appreciates their engaging and clear communication styles that they've brought to CMAP here as well. So kudos to you all again, for really making sure that we were thinking about the digital hubs, that we were thinking about bilingual content on those sites, and elevating the lived experience of residents. And those were some of the highlights that we heard for why we received that award. So congratulations to our comms team. Awesome. Land use inventory update. I know many of you are curious about like what's going on at the local level related to how we're planning for and how our land is being used. The 2026 inventory is now available. It actually features 2023 data, but it includes a review of about 60,000 parcels just to make sure that we're continuing to have the data updated with the latest information about what's going on at the local level. We use this to help develop our long-range forecasts. So if you know folks who are interested in participating, making sure that our data is up to date, please do let us know. But we're excited to release this latest inventory update, which updates a number of the different types of development that we're seeing across the region. You'll also have a legislative update included in your packet. The IGA team will present a full legislative update at our June meeting. So just the memo is available for your review today, unless you have any additional questions for them. And then we have held 4 Catalyst Series events across the region for the century plan that we're working on. We had one on industrial development, one here on the climate action plan. So thank you to Nina and Carolyn and Jada for joining us and providing remarks at that event. It was sort of a fun celebratory event, a little bit less formal than some of our events that we've had. But we had a great group of stakeholders here that are committed to implementing climate action change recommendations. So we're excited for that. I don't know if Nina or Jada wanted to say anything, highlights? No.
It was great.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Yeah.
Shortest comment?
The shortest comment. It was for those online. Nina said it was great. So I can attest. It's not just me talking. And then we also last week held a really great event here in concert with Current on Water Week, where we had a professor come in and talk about water governance and the fragmented nature of water governance and really the critical importance of addressing water governance here in the region and the state. We're hearing a lot from stakeholders across the region of these events about water. We had Manny Teodoro. We also had Joel Bremer, the CEO from the Alliance for the Great Lakes Water Alliance. Again, I think thinking about the importance of coordination for our water systems, we sort of take it for granted that it's just out there and being taken care of. But we know as planners that underground the system needs a lot of work and a lot of upgrades, and you just don't see it. We just turn the water on, and if it comes on, it just is supposed to come on. And when it doesn't, right, it really causes challenges. And so we have communities that aren't thinking about it, and we have communities that think about it daily in our region because of their lack of access to fresh water and their sort of rolling boil alerts that they have here too. So we do think that this is going to be a critical pillar of our work for the Century Plan moving forward. We do continue to engage with the councils of governments across the region as well, and we've had several really great COG meetings, hearing from what local councils are dealing with and grappling with, and we'll bring that back to you all as well. So today, our discussion closely aligns with many of the themes that have been emerging throughout our engagement process. The importance of a resilient and modernized electric grid has come up time and time again, so that we thought it would be timely to have a discussion about that as well. As we think about our economic competitiveness, our energy landscape is just really important to that as well. So today's panel discussion will help further inform that. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Just a comment on the water with data centers. Is that part of the are you integrating that potential down the road as to the impact of those water, both, for those in the metropolitan area and those in the outlying areas that depend on groundwater?
Yeah, I think that is one of the hot topic reasons why water and energy are coming up. But we also know that water and energy are really critical, not just to data centers, but to food and beverage manufacturing, right? To industrial manufacturing across our region. So yes, and for a number of other reasons.
Any other questions for Aaron? All right, move on to the consent agenda, which are the minutes, and there's no activity in the line of credit. So I'll entertain a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, the motion carries. Moving on to our first discussion. That's on the comprehensive climate action plan, and we have Nora Beck. Nora, welcome.
All right. I'm just gonna, oh no, it does go higher. Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to present on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan for Greater Chicago. I'm Nora Beck. I'm a principal in the Regional Policy and Implementation Division here, where I help lead our efforts in climate action. As you may recall, in November, we walked through the development of the plan. I'm happy to report that since that time, CMAP, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission submitted the final plan to US EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, who funded the effort, and we have publicly released the plan on our website. Today, I'll briefly ground us in the plan, but want to focus on what implementation actually requires in practice, particularly around the electric grid and buildings, because these two areas really shape whether the clean energy transition succeeds. We can go, thank you. So since release, we've been presenting across the region, sharing findings through our website and newsletter, and developing materials to help decision makers understand what implementation could look like in practice. The conversation is now shifting from what does the plan say to what will it take to implement it. The next slide, thank you. The Climate Action Plan provides a data-driven roadmap to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 86% by 2050. It models more than 30 strategies across sectors and identifies the combination of actions needed to achieve those reductions. Importantly, this is not a checklist of local actions. The scale of the challenge requires actions at multiple levels: municipal, county, state, federal, utility, and the private sector. One of the most important findings is that the state and local action alone still has the potential to achieve a 58% reduction by 2050. That's significant, and it helps clarify where regional leadership matters most. I believe that the biggest takeaway from the plan is that this is a coordination challenge, not just a technology challenge. Our sectors are interconnected. Decisions in one area affect another. Transportation affects electricity demand. Building decisions impact grid infrastructure. Land use impacts both building energy use and travel behavior. And achieving this transition requires planning, investment, workforce capacity, and coordination across systems and institutions. These are not incremental changes, these are system-level changes. The plan addresses all major emission sectors, but today I want to focus on two areas. First, the electric grid, because it needs to become the backbone of this transition. And second, buildings, because they are one of the largest emission sources, but also one of the clearest opportunities for state and local governments to lead. And there's obviously important work happening in transportation and industry as well, but we'll save those for another discussion. Nearly every major strategy in the plan runs through the grid. As buildings, vehicles, and industry shift from fossil fuels to electricity, electricity demand increases while gasoline and natural gas use decline. That means the grid must do two things at once, right? It needs to become significantly cleaner, and it needs to expand capacity to reliably serve that growing demand. In this chart, you can see that much of the region's current energy use occurs outside the electric grid system today through gasoline, diesel, and natural gas. The transition requires large-scale energy efficiency improvements to bring the total energy use down, and then shifting much of that demand onto electricity, making the grid the backbone of the region's energy system, not just one part of it. One reason this is challenging is that the grid is not one system, right? It includes generation, transmission, and distribution. Each is planned, governed, and operated differently and on different timelines. Generation produces our electricity, transmission moves it long distances, and distribution delivers it locally to homes and businesses. All three need to evolve together to support this work, and that presents both opportunity and complexity. Infrastructure investments take years to plan and build. Regulatory and utility planning cycles move on fixed timelines, and demand is expected to grow unevenly across the region. In addition, new sources of large energy demand, including data centers and advanced manufacturing, are creating additional uncertainty around how quickly electricity demand may grow in different parts of the region. At the same time, clean energy resources have to keep pace with demand growth to ensure electrification actually delivers emissions reductions. And so this is why implementation is fundamentally a coordination challenge. Even though utilities and regulators lead many grid decisions, many of the factors that shape demand are local. Land use and development determines where demand grows. Buildings determine how much energy is used. And local energy resources like solar and storage can help meet that demand in different ways. Many of the decisions that shape grid demand are made locally, even if the grid itself is not. And importantly, those same decisions can also help reduce pressure on the system, right? Energy efficiency, more flexible energy use, and local clean energy like rooftop solar and battery storage can lower that peak demand, improve resilience, and support a faster, more reliable transition. Local decisions shape how much energy we use, when we use it, and how we supply it. So bottom line, our infrastructure planning, our land use and building policies can no longer operate independently. We need to be working in coordination. One of the places where this coordination challenge becomes most tangible is in buildings. Buildings account for roughly 35% of regional emissions, making them one of the largest and most actionable sectors in the plan. And unlike some sectors, many of the most important building decisions are already made through state and local policy. That means we do not necessarily have to wait for federal action to begin making meaningful progress. As shown in this chart, the plan finds that state and local action alone could achieve the overwhelming majority of the building sector reductions, 77% needed by 2050. At its core, this transition is about changing how buildings use energy. And there are three major components. First, electrification, replacing fossil fuel equipment with technologies like heat pumps and electric appliances. Second, efficiency, reducing overall energy demand through weatherization and smarter energy management. And third, stronger standards, using building codes and performance standards to improve both new and existing buildings over time. These work together, not separately, right? Efficiency reduces demand, electrification reduces emissions, and standards can help scale adoption. The plan identifies local action items, but they largely fall into three categories. So first, leading locally. These are things that municipalities and counties can do directly and are already doing. Upgrading public buildings through efficiency retrofits, installing solar and battery storage on public facilities, and replacing gas equipment and electrifying municipal operations. Second, shape and support. So these are actions that help communities prepare for and accelerate the transition, enabling solar, storage, EV charging, improving transparency around building energy use, supporting heat pump adoption, and coordinating with utilities and regional partners. And third, advocate for scale. So many of the most impactful actions work best at the state level. That includes statewide energy codes, clean heat standards, building performance standards, and incentives and large-scale retrofit programs. So not every action belongs at the local level, but local leadership is essential to making the system work. These actions drive immediate benefits, right? They have the potential to lower energy costs, improve indoor and outdoor air quality, but they can also enable the broader transition by reducing pressure on the grid and improving how energy is used in the region. And over time, these actions can help avoid a more costly infrastructure expansion by reducing and better managing demand. Buildings are where a significant portion of future energy demand will ultimately be shaped. We recognize that implementation requires guidance, funding, technical support, and partnership. The good news is that communities do not need to start from scratch, and many of the building blocks already exist. Across the region, utilities, state agencies, local governments, and regional organizations are already developing programs, funding opportunities, and implementation support. A few examples include the utility programs such as ComEd's Whole Home Electric Program, state financing opportunities through the Illinois Climate Bank, and peer learning opportunities and technical assistance networks through organizations like the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. The opportunity now is to better connect and scale these efforts across the region. And I think that's one of the most important roles CMAP can play moving forward, right? Helping communities navigate implementation, share lessons learned, and better align planning and infrastructure decisions across the jurisdictions. So thank you. One of the clearest findings from the plan is that regional and local decisions matter enormously. How we grow, how we build, how we modernize infrastructure, and how we coordinate across jurisdictions will all shape whether this transition succeeds and how affordable and reliable it is along the way. These technologies largely exist, so the challenge now is aligning that planning and investment and implementation across systems that have historically operated fairly separately. And that's why this region has such an important role to play. So happy to answer any clarifying questions before we move on to the next agenda item.
Any questions? Just the first graph about showing the generation, the transmission, and the implementation of the electric grid. Part of it is we can locally or statewide control. The other part we can't, and that's the sharing, which has really been the highest cost has been being part of the greater multi-state transmission and not having control over that. Are you addressing how we can work or attempt to work even outside of our abilities to legislate things or certainly create things going forward?
The plan does recognize that these are important levers that we need to be speaking up in, but it does really focus on that local distribution and decisions that our state and municipal and county governments can take on the distribution system. So we're trying both, and we recognize that through coordination we can advocate for ourselves in those spaces.
And again, in the area of generation, we have the ability statewide to think going forward as to alternatives, like nuclear, going back to nuclear or mini nuclear, as far as the generation of it. But again, we are not in control of, and what's driven electrical costs more recently has been the Midwest grid and the bidding on those terms. So again, things we can't control, things we can't, but that impact can be very large.
Very significant, yes.
Eric?
Thanks for a great presentation. Just one area that I think for municipalities, there might be an opportunity to support, and I don't remember the name of the recent Illinois legislation around firming up the grid, storage, whatever,
Probably Surja.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is having, the large battery storage locations. We've been in talks with folks, and zoning is obviously one of the challenges, and helping our community better understand, frankly, the lack of huge impact on the community other than stabilizing the grid. So I think there's an opportunity there for education. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've seen those examples in Mesa, Arizona, for example. So I just wanted to share that experience with you as an opportunity for more support for municipalities as we try to move that ball forward.
Great. Thank you.
And one last comment, if I may, at the end, talking about implementation of energy efficient things that Obviously, a large discussion in the state has been housing affordable.
Mhm.
And the type of technologies that we're talking about, I would think you're going to add initially to the cost of construction and affordability. Certainly long-term, that's the whole point of this. But again, there's a conflict of trying to move in that direction, but yet try to match it up with affordability, I think is a problem. For example, the General Assembly a couple of years ago, was it last year, that requires now that EVs be put into new construction. That's costly, and that will add to to the cost of housing.
Mhm.
Again, we have some conflicts going on here, knowing we're trying to move in the direction of energy efficiency, but in the meantime, demand and certainly materials have not reached a point where it is affordable.
Mhm.
So how do we match that?
I mean, that's a central tension, right, that we need to grapple with and we need to better understand. It's hard, right, because we need to build new housing, but every building that we built with natural gas eventually needs to be retrofitted, right? So it's not without costs later. So it's just when are we going to do those costs? When are we going to have that energy savings potentially experienced by homeowners? So those are decisions that we'll need to grapple with.
Okay, Dina, I'm sorry, you had a comment?
Yeah, so Nina Mudia, thank you for the great presentation. And something that I really liked is the elaboration of how much coordination is important here. And it's not one of those things that's like, oh, we hope this gets coordinated well. I think we need to invest a lot of time and attention. And one question I would have, but I also have more to say, is is there a way for us to incentivize those types of coordinated efforts through our technical assistance program at CMAP? Like, if we're saying like, this is something that, cities will need, we're suggesting cities do this thing, but also how do we create capacity, right?
Mhm.
And so like, how do we then influence how we take in projects or prioritize projects to meet some of the goals that are in the plan? And so I guess that's more of a statement. Actually, that's not a question. Sorry.
Fair enough.
And then also would love to understand the intersection of our climate goals. And now that we have NEDA and that being a way to leverage land use in the region, how do we start that on the good foot, as they say,
Mhm.
and think about our climate goals? And now that these agencies will have the ability to develop affordable housing, how do we make those numbers work out from a public good?
Mhm.
Because I do agree, yes, things are going to be more costly now. It's because we didn't do it before, and it's going to be more costly if we wait.
Mhm.
And we have to restructure what we think about, which I know, profit and money and capitalism. We have to rethink about how we approach those things and what is a public good. There are pilots out there, specifically in Evanston, where they took American Rescue Plan funds. It's a project that C&T works on and helped to retrofit properties, but there was no cost to the homeowner. So that cost would not be passed off to the renters, but they had to sign some type of covenant saying that it would remain affordable. So there are options. You're right. There are policy mechanisms. Just because it's a challenge doesn't mean it's impossible, but we do have to think about implementation and be very creative and buck the status quo of how we think about these systems currently. So I'm excited that we're starting the conversation, but I don't want it to just end with here are recommendations. It's like, how do we, CMAP, operationalize these suggestions and actually incentivize the organizations that we work with, to buy into the plan and not in just their sign off every year when we print it, but like in the implementation of it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mayor?
those are critical questions that we're grappling with right now, and I'm also hoping that you all will discuss them in the next agenda item.
Mayor Noak, you're online?
Yes, thank you. As many of you have heard me say in the past at our meetings over the last several years, one aspect of this too that I'd like to continue to have a conversation about is how do we incentivize rooftop solar on larger industrial facilities. We're fortunate to have some of the larger ones in our community, but there's still an untapped potential there, and we really need to work to find it. We continue to see projects that are going further and further out, and greenfield sites when we have a lot of rooftops solar that we could be putting in existing areas where they're already pulling in onto the grid in those areas. So that's definitely something I'd like to see a better discussion about. Also, I want to comment again off what the chairman mentioned too on the requirements on residential for EV capacity. You know, one of the things also is what that ends up doing is that new developments end up buying capacity from ComEd that they have to sit on that they may not need for decades, which also then contributes to a lack of capacity on the system. So there are always unintended consequences that we always need to keep an eye on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
I don't think so.
Nora, thank you very much for the great report.
you.
Yeah, and thanks for the comments too. So we're going to transition to our next item here, which is the Century Plan update and the panel discussion. But as Kyle and the panelists are joining us here, I just wanted to emphasize that, these are the systems, structures that I think we are going to continue to grapple with and need to address as we think about the next century of our work here. If we're going to remain competitive, if we are going to think about our region continuing to thrive, systems of water governance, systems related to our energy infrastructure are really critical for us to address, because they don't just help us with our household affordability issues, they really help us attract businesses. I think over the past decade, one of the top reasons businesses have come to Northeastern Illinois was because of our relatively cheap energy. But I think the things are changing, and we're thinking about our proactive approach to addressing these challenges together. So with that, I'm sorry to step
No, go ahead.
on your toes, not a mayor, but let me turn it over to Kyle for the next agenda item.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, board.
Morning.
Panelists, if you all want to make your way up here for me and keep me company, I'm happy to do this by myself, but I think the board will find it more informative with all of your expertise, wherever you all would like. Just a note of housekeeping. As you speak today, please hit the button on the microphone so those that are online can hear what you have to say in the insight. As Aaron said in her opening remarks, energy continues to be that top theme that comes up in our Catalyst series, our one-on-one conversations, regardless if we are meeting with somebody in the city, out in the outer parts of our region. Energy is that big topic today. And so building on how Nora introduced CCAP, today we've got 4 incredible, insightful leaders in the energy space to help us better understand what's happening in energy and give us a chance to ask our own questions. So with that, I will start with Mark. Do you want to introduce yourself, who you're with, and kind of your connection to this? And then we'll work our way to your left back to me.
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Mark Pruitt. I'm the principal of the Power Bureau. We're a small, it's the royal we, it's me. A consulting firm. I advise data centers, power project developers, system planners on energy issues. My claim to fame is I used to be somebody in Illinois. I was the first director of the Illinois Power Agency. That was the agency responsible for negotiating wholesale power contracts for residential and small commercial customers in Illinois. I also managed the Illinois Renewable Portfolio Standard. I work with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus on energy and policy issues. I also have a research position at Argonne National Lab, where I work on grid resiliency and security issues, and I teach energy policy at Northwestern. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Go ahead, Desi.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Desi Dakova. I work for Pure Lithium. We're a battery startup who we just relocated to Chicago from Boston with the support of the state, and we're scaling up to kilowatt hour production. Really excited to be here as within the next few years, we're trying to expand to gigawatt hour production. So we would love to help make a dent in modernizing the grid. Background on me, I studied chemistry at the University of Michigan. I did research in photoelectrochemistry. I've interned at the National Renewable Energy Lab, where I worked on perovskite photovoltaics. And at Pure Lithium, I was a battery engineer for a while, transitioned to a role as the policy and grant manager. I minored in energy science and policy, so that's always kind of been something I wanted to get into.
Good morning, Stacy Paradis. I am a commissioner on the Illinois Commerce Commission. Prior to that, I was the executive director of the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. So very much appreciate your conversation from before this. I would encourage you, if you're thinking about energy efficiency, it's not just an electric, it should be natural gas efficiency. That's going to get you your most savings, at least over the next 10 years. And then on the water side, we also regulate all water utilities in Illinois, so our regulated water investor-owned utilities. So happy to talk about that as well.
All right. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Andy Plenge. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Energy Policy at ComEd. That has three areas, one of which is our energy efficiency team. So likewise, appreciated the discussion. Look forward to covering more of the opportunity there when you think about kind of near-term practical solutions to some of the energy constraints. That team also has our demand response programs, load flexibility. So look forward to talking about that. And then we do have a beneficial electrification program that comes up under me as well. So lots of relevant topics that relevant to the last discussion. I also have our what's called our energy acquisition team. So they procure RECs and power directly at the direction of the IPA, which Mark previously headed. And then lastly, I have a strategy team that supports strategic initiatives to kind of figure out where there are opportunities to evolve and support our customers better. I've been at Exelon broadly over the last 18 years in a variety of finance and strategy roles, including with our former nuclear division, which has now been spun off at Constellation. So look forward to the discussion. Appreciate being here. Thanks.
Thank you all. To get us going, this question I'm going to ask of all of you to put your own personal view to it. We heard in the opening remarks from Nora's presentation, the board's comments, that energy has become that top line critical issue. From y'all's perspective, why is energy or grid modernization becoming such a central theme for our region today? Andy, do you want to start, given that you're closest to me?
Back to you.
I figured there was going to be a reason why this seat was open. I'm happy to, and I imagine the panelists I will mention similar things. So I think we're all seeing it. The people are relying on the grid more than ever before. Whether it's a specific climate action plan encouraging electrification or just consumer choice. I'm sure many of us at this point have been in an electric car. Many of us may own them. And anyone who's done it, I haven't heard anyone say they're ready to go back. And so I think you're going to continue to see installed base there. You continue to see more businesses finding that actually switching over to electrifying their processes is just sort of better business. As some of the older technologies roll out, they'll find newer electrification processes, et cetera, that help them. Of course, we talked about data centers as well. And in general, just the reliance on electronics, power quality really matters. So the ability to support those needs is a big part of as the old grid infrastructure becomes outdated or we need to support new ones. Using modern equipment is important. The element of customer choice I mentioned as well is important. As people want to adopt solar or bring batteries at home, I think there's a lot of cost-saving opportunities as well associated with that. I really agree with the comment earlier about rooftop solar. You need actually pretty sophisticated IT equipment. There's security considerations. And frankly, we'll hit a limit at some point unless we invest in some of these software solutions to accommodate those distributed technologies to be able to accommodate more. So those investments in the system to modernize it to accept kind of modern day protocols is a key part of kind of making society work these days and ensuring you can encourage the economic development. I haven't mentioned weather, but we actually benefit. We'll talk about maybe some of the opportunities that we have as a region from a development perspective. And one of the things we have going for us is a fairly temperate climate. We don't have earthquakes. We don't have hurricanes. We do, of course, have tornadoes, though. And notwithstanding that we're pretty well positioned, it's like, I think, something like a 40% increase in high kind of heavy precipitation events since the 1900s. There was another one that is escaping me, but by a couple of different measures, we've seen significant increases in weather, including I think we have the most tornadoes out of all the 50 states here this year so far. So lots of reasons to focus on modernization. I think a modernized grid helps for economic competitiveness, but frankly, it's just sort of the direction that a lot of people are going, and it's kind of required. Thanks.
All those things are true. All those things also cost a substantial amount of money. So one of the things that's the responsibility that we have at the commission is, yes, when the fun acronym bills pass, when a FEJA passes, a CEJA passes, a SURJA passes, there are increasingly more responsibilities that fall to the Illinois Commerce Commission. Obviously, we are the utility regulatory body, one of 52 across the country that we all kind of work. We talk to each other, so we learn from each other. The biggest debate right now is, and energy prices are driving election results right now. And that is something that is probably the first time ever that's happened. But what we are seeing as regulators is this balance between environmental goals and economic goals and affordability. And that's why you see some states now have pulled back on some of what their climate goals are. In Illinois, the Illinois Commerce Commission, we already have the authority to balance those goals out. So we have the ability to, pull back on some of those climate goals if we feel that there's going to be resource adequacy issues, if we feel that there are going to be substantial cost implications. We have that authority, and that was just reaffirmed in the Clean, Reliable Grid Affordability Act, I want to say is what it stands for, that comes into effect June 1st. So that is something that comes before us all the time. Now, since CEJA passed in 2021, our electric utilities, ComEd and Ameren, have come before us on multi-year grid plans that they're required to do. So those have had substantial investments. The first time through, we rejected the grid plans, and then we spent another year working through what those were being. I think we're in a good place that those were that were first passed I came on the commission in 2023, we rejected in 2023, we approved them in 2024. And we're about to have those come before us again. Some of that is already in process before us right now. And we do have to coordinate the beneficial electrification plans that he spoke of, the multi-year grid plans, and then just normal rate cases that come before us. We have to balance all that out with our electric utilities. Then at the same time, not always coordinated, we have to do the same thing with our gas utilities, because in Illinois, we have ComEd is electric only. Ameren is our only dual fuel utility. Our others, you have People's Gas that's here in Chicago. You have NICOR, which is probably what the majority of you folks work with, and then a little bit of North Shore Gas. Those are all independent gas companies. So we are balancing that out. So one of the things that the commission is doing, in addition to all this mandated work that we're doing from the General Assembly, is we initiated our own Future of Gas process, which is working through right now. And you can find all that on the commission's website. And it's come down to kind of 3 phases. The first phase, which is a substantial group, I want to say there's about 1,100, 1,200 people on the listserv list that have been working with us on Future of Gas, is 11 different pilots that are going to be proposed and come before the commission. Those are things that we will then decide what kind of ratepayer investment will go into those pilots. That'll be happening over the next 12 to 18 months. The second piece of that is a pathways study that we're in the process of finalizing that contract right now. That pathway study is going to identify all the scenarios and the cost implications that come from those, both the economic costs and then any resource adequacy issues that could come from that. And then the last piece, all those stakeholders that I mentioned are working on policy recommendations that'll go either things that we are empowered as the commission to already work on, or recommendations we would have to the General Assembly or the governor on how to better integrate what our future is with gas combined with what our future is with on the electric, which we have kind of very strong mandates. So those are really the big questions are. And I can tell you for myself, for my fellow commissioners here in Illinois, and every commissioner across the country, the biggest concern right now is affordability. That is the biggest concern. It has evolved. I've only been on the commission 3 years, and I suppose we've evolved now 3 different times on what our focus is, but that is the biggest issue right now. So those cost considerations are the biggest thing that come to us, and also understanding that there is an obligation to serve that we also have to meet as well. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Desi, I'm actually going to do what I warned you I would, which is to kind of guide the conversation. Mark, I'm going to go to you because during our prep call, you talked about the trade-offs that exist in this conversation. And so I think building on the commissioner's perspective, I'd love for you to both, one, kind of address why grid modernization is so important, but then also share your perspective on those trade-offs that you shared with us on Monday.
Sure. Couple things just for context. We don't have an energy problem. We have a capacity problem. Energy is all the megawatt hours that come out of a power plant when they operate, right? We have more than enough energy. It's just that we don't need all that energy at 2 a.m. in the morning. We need it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in August, right? That peak ability, that peak demand, the ability to meet that peak demand in the middle of summer on a hot summer day, that's capacity. So in Illinois used to export power, which is also capacity, and energy. Illinois was really the battery of the Midwest. Over the past 30 years, we've seen a general decline in our capacity ability as main load primary power plants have retired. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm agnostic, right? I'm just trying to give you the perspective of math, which is really what's been missing in Illinois and other states. The math is you have to meet that maximum capacity. For about 3 decades, we haven't planned, we haven't measured, we haven't anticipated how much we need. I'm going to say that again. We have not had a plan for 30 years. This is a faith-based organization. This is like a trust fund baby that wakes up and realizes that they only have the last $1,000 in their account. It's been squandered. It's gone, right? So now you're going to have to rebuild. You're going to have to move and make things happen. So I'm glad to see the change in focus. But the issue is capacity. We're still incentivizing energy. When we want to put solar on a roof, I think that's great, but that's not capacity. You can't turn it on and off on demand. When you want to put a wind farm in, that's great. That's energy. That's not capacity, right? Not in a meaningful way. So we have to get to a point where we start putting resources on the grid that can support that peak demand, because here's the price that Illinois is going to pay. You won't get any more economic development, because if you don't have enough capacity available on your grid, you can't connect a new factory. You can't build a new neighborhood. You can't get a new data center, because there's not the ability to meet that demand the hot summer afternoon, right? So this is a way that's going to set data centers aside. This is going to choke out your ability to expand economically unless you really buckle down and start doing some math. Well, not even math, arithmetic, right? So, I don't know that there's any solution. What I said in our pre-meeting was, I think there's trade-offs. You're not going to put up a 2 gigawatt nuclear power plant this decade, probably even the next decade. The best time to build a power plant was 20 years ago, right? To get 2 gigawatts or 2,000 megawatts or, those types of chunks of capacity to get out ahead of the now growing demand, which is, again, never happened in the past 30 years, you're going to have to make some trade-offs. You're going to say, well, we're going to have to sacrifice affordability to make the investments to get over this hump. We're going to have to sacrifice maybe some of our timelines for retiring fossil fuel plants so that we can continue to maintain the reliability of our grid until we get our legs beneath us. So again, I'm an agnostic. I'm just trying to tell folks that, all the happy talk and hand waving is great, but it's unserious until you really start to focus on what are the resources that we need right now to keep the lights on. Otherwise, your economic development becomes smothered. So
wait, before.
Yeah.
So Mark likes to get everyone's attention, and he did that. So I will say, he is right, but under again, Surja, which is, whatever it stands for. They love acronyms in Springfield. That comes into law June 1st. One of the requirements in that is for the commission, for the first time since we deregulated the state in the 90s, we are responsible to put together an integrated resource plan. Now we're going to do an integrated resource plan for the entire state. So that means we are going to be assessing what the needs are for the entire state, including IOUs and munis and co-ops. That is something our staff is going to bring that to us. It has to come to us by November 16th. We'll have just under a year to make a decision on that and what those guidance are going to be. At the same time, someone mentioned nuclear before. So when the governor did his budget address in February, he also released an executive order on nuclear. So we have already approved 2 notices of intent, one that went to nuclear developers that's going to be coming back here, and I want to say about the next 30 days, of where are they interested in doing nuclear, where would new nuclear go, but that also includes uprates. Illinois is the largest nuclear generating state in the country. We have the potential for over 1 gigawatt of uprates, and uprates can happen a lot sooner. We also have the potential, we also have a number, obviously, of working nuclear sites, some of which already have pre-site approval permits for new. So there is discussion on that isn't necessarily 20 years out. So the planning is happening, but Mark is right. We haven't done it for a long time. So we're all going to be doing it very quickly, and it is going to fall to us at the ICC and working with the IPA and things like that. We're also updating all the renewable access energy plans, the REAPs. Those are also being updated right now based on kind of all these considerations that are coming in. That has to be done by the end of the year. And then the energy efficiency plans are the updated energy efficiency plans are getting filed with us at the end of the month.
Stacy.
And no disrespect to anyone at this table. No one at this table caused this problem.
To get people excited. I just
Well,
want to make sure that we do have a plan for some of
I'm
this.
paid by the hour, so I try to, get it all out. And it's no disrespect to the people at the table today, right? This has been an ongoing activity, right? I'm glad that there's a pivot coming. That's terrific. But planning is not action. Action and deployment takes time, takes a lot of money.
Turn your microphone on, Mayor.
Oh, sorry. I was going to make the observation that planning is great, but what do they say? 95% of people make plans and 5% of us execute. And there's a reason for that, because that's true too. So you can have all the plans in the world, and government is great at plans, okay? Especially Springfield. And I'm just being a little sarcastic as a mayor, and no execution. Or execution on somebody else's back, which is really their trademark in government. And so I'm listening more over here right now than I am to the planning in the state, because I've heard it before. This sounds like an immediate need. Capacity, I get it. I mean, if it's not there to turn it on, and I was wondering what storage is like, and I'm not sophisticated in this at all. But it would seem to me that part of capacity would be storage. And one of the things I hear about my wife's battery operated car, I have a gas guzzler, she's got a battery car, is that there's not enough capacity. We try to drive to Colorado, we try to drive to the West Coast, East Coast, we can't get there without multiple stops. So I get it, but I really want to hear more about you two, okay? Because I've heard planning over and over and over. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to share what's happening in the battery sphere. I'm really excited about our chemistry. We're doing lithium metal as opposed to lithium ion. It's twice as energy dense at half the weight, half the cost. So, economically, it is there. The technology exists, right? That's at the end of the day, the technology exists. It's just not implemented. It's not implemented at the scale. And the capacity issue is exactly that. So I think the biggest thing is, as was mentioned, also, like, do we want to do we want to invest? Do we want to take up the costs now or later? And that's the biggest issue that I'm seeing in the battery industry. Private investment is drying up. There's been a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. Investors are kind of sick of it. So private investment, it's not really happening anymore. And this is the point where we need government support. And the trade-off, the cost is it's massive investment to scale up from, we're a kilowatt hour scale. We're planning to go to gigawatt hour scale. We're going to be at kilowatt hour production annually by the end of 2027. We're trying to get to gigawatt hour within the next 5 years, but the state consumes terawatt hour scale. We have to scale up really quickly. And I think the biggest opportunity here is the battery issue is supply chain. All of the, raw feedstocks, it comes from South America, it goes through China. It's incredibly expensive and volatile, tariffs, all of that. So I think the biggest opportunity, and, our company is vertically integrated. We our technology, we're able to harness, and we have secured North American-based feedstocks. And I think, in this realm, in all, renewable energy, in storage, we have to look at domestic manufacturing and domestic or North American-based supply chains. The technology is there. The ideas are there. We just really need capital investment to get to any type of meaningful scale.
Hey, Desi, can you touch on the economic development implications? Mark talked about and named it that it's not just data centers that need energy. And I was really heartened by Pure Lithium's choice to make the pro-Chicagoland decision to leave Boston, come to where businesses thrive, in part because of our energy and because of the space that ComEd provides. Can you talk about that from your perspective as an economic driver and how that kind of factored in?
Yeah, of course. It felt like, the state of Illinois really, we looked at different states to come in, I'll be honest. And the state of Illinois really opened the doors. We were really drawn to the Rev Act from the state that has been, massively helpful in creating these financial incentives for us. Rent is cheaper in Chicago than Boston. And being closer to the auto industry belt, that really opens up opportunities in implementing our technology into retrofitting facilities. And as we decommission facilities, what's going to happen to the facilities? What's going to happen to the people working there? And our technology really has the opportunity to move into those spaces, create all the new jobs. Excuse me. Under the REV agreement, we're going to create at least 50 jobs to operate our kilowatt hour facility, the gigawatt hour facility, over 100 jobs. And our kilowatt hour facility is based in Chicago proper, and the gigawatt hour, that's a massive scale up. We're going to have to expand into the suburbs. So that's why I'm really excited to be around all of you. This is going to, affect your communities. We're going to create jobs there. Yeah, I think that's the economic side of it. I mean, also, it's a great technology. It's more affordable to make than the lithium ion. Looking at the entire value chain and with it being vertically integrated, we capture all of that value. There's no transportation costs. There's no transportation emissions, and it's much faster. So the lithium ion battery takes about 500 hours to go from raw feedstock to an operational battery. Our process operates on the time scale of days. So that's a massive improvement and massive value.
Go ahead, Andy.
Kyle, can I ask a question real
Oh,
quick?
yeah, please, man.
As Mayor Grasso said, I mean, government agencies are great on planning, and then we all get bogged down in analysis paralysis where just nothing gets done, right? So, we are probably one of the largest regional planning agencies in the country, and we have close to 10 million people. So, I'd like to know from each one of you, if we had to prioritize something as a regional planning board so that we're not running in 25 different directions, what would you recommend that we prioritize?
Hey, Stacy, can I route that question to you first? Because I'd also like your perspective on how this agency can work with the ICC on these integrated plans. So kind of a second element to Matt's question.
Sure. And I'll tell you the biggest thing that I talk about right now is forecasting. Let's talk about what's really happening. The biggest challenge that we see with data centers, and this is in particular a problem in the Chicago region, but happens across the country, is by the nature of it, economic development. We like to shop around, right? Let's see what deal I can get from Chicago. Let's see what deal I can get from Evanston. Let's see what I can get from Naperville. The problem is then when you lock all that information under an NDA, then you're going to report that you need this many gigawatts. Somebody's going to report, Evanston's going to say they need this much, Naperville. And then all of a sudden, we look like we have to be on the hook for 3, 4, 5 times more volume than what is needed coming in, which means when we talk about grid infrastructure investments, we would have to build something far bigger than what's needed. So the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity is making sure we have these forecasts right and are accurate so that we're not overbuilding and burdening people with additional costs, but underbuilding and losing our resource adequacy. Not only is Illinois our companies coming here because of the lower prices, they're also coming here for reliability. I mean, ComEd is, I want to say, one of the most reliable utility in the country, and Ameren has improved substantially based on investments that they've done. So I would argue your biggest issue is going to be forecasting and knowing what's coming in. And that's not just true for electric consumption. That can also be for gas. That can also be for water consumption as well, which is an issue that obviously has been debated a lot recently. So that's what I would argue is one of your biggest issues. years.
Andy, I'll let you answer that question next because it has been ComEd that has been the driver for the economic growth of this region. The number of companies that said they were coming here because ComEd was reliable, affordable, and had a mix of clean was the top reason, second reason, and third reason. So I'd love for your perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll so totally agree with Commissioner Paradis that, I think everyone is, first I'll mention, we are definitely not unique. Now, so like as she noted, affordability and sort of this pressure on kind of the system is a national issue. We still, so even while supply prices have gone up, everyone is sort of seeing it. And so we remain relatively competitive, regionally, especially for top metro areas. So that's been positive. We have taken steps as well, specifically on the load forecasting. So there's, the commission approved as sort of a condition of these large loads that they need to go sign what we have called a transmission security agreement. Effectively, once they sign that, they are on the hook for 10 years worth of transmission revenues, which is a major investment. We've collected billions at this point. That's essentially they're on the hook to pay, even if they don't show up, to make sure that they're paying their share for that investment that we're all making, that's being recovered from all of us, including them. The other one I wanted to mention, though, is, in terms of where to prioritize, and this gets back to the question, there's planning and then there's execution. There are so many programs that Surge really just is expanding or building upon that is available to people now that address some of the issues we've talked about. Like rooftop solar is one of those examples. We've talked about it. There are these massive warehouses that essentially sit there and people have focused on things like community solar and putting it in kind of big open areas, but these rooftops are also sitting there just waiting for someone to park solar on there. We are pretty unique, and DESI's relocation, their company's relocation, is one example of all the excitement we're seeing in the state of Illinois about developers coming here and wanting to provide solar and storage solutions to customers because they see real economic value for everyone. They know we are unique in that we've set it up that essentially people can sell any excess capacity they have. So if you only consume 10 kilowatts or 5 kilowatts at your home and you put 10 kilowatts on your roof, you can effectively sell that 5 kilowatts back, given the way we've structured our tariffs. And so, as you think about your businesses sort of seeing the increase in kind of their power bills as a result of the supply increases, the lack of capacity, the ability to go kind of take matters in their own hand by virtue of installing solar and storage to essentially sell the excess back, kind of as a win-win for everyone. As Commissioner Paradis mentioned, the energy efficiency program is going from like 450 to closer to over 500 million a year. There are programs essentially across the board, residential, commercial, industrial, et cetera, making sure that your constituents are aware of those programs and taking advantage of them. They may have taken a look at them a couple of years ago and they didn't necessarily make sense. But now, given where everything is, makes more sense. And we've been given more opportunity to claim savings on the therm side, which, as the commissioner mentioned, the heating, the gas side, it can be particularly attractive. So I do think there are like big long-term things to kind of think about, and that's now underway. That will take time, but I do think there's lots of things that customers specifically can do, and with more kind of awareness and engagement in our programs, which we're ramping up and thinking all the time about how we can do that. But certainly your partnership there would be really helpful given the resources out there.
Can I ask a question about the trade-off going forward? Solar farms, for example, what is the trade-off, and whether it's even economic impact of not having farmland, but having acres of solar panels, or having solar panels and not having development take place, whether it's commercial or residential? Have we looked at that as we, in the short term, look at these farms coming up all over the place?
Yeah. Yeah. I am not, well, and I maybe just to understand your question a little bit better, just the sort of.
I mean, certainly the need for solar, and you talked about, using commercial or industrial buildings as an alternative to land.
Yep.
Solar panels being put into land.
Yeah.
But if you travel down I-55, for example, it's incredible the last couple of years where right off the interstate are acres and acres of solar farms. Again, going 2050, is that the future of open lands going forward?
So,
Where's the
yeah.
trade-off? And
So I will say there was a bill that was passed, I want to say 2 years ago, that gave the state more authority and kind of took authority away from the counties. If somebody wanted to do more siting for renewable energy, and there was substantial pushback on that. So one of the things with the government reacting to it is, the siting authority for the appeals board is now going to come to the commission as well. So that's something we're going to have to start taking up. And that happens in June. I don't know how many people will come before us. But that is something that the state tried to push through pretty aggressively. And then I think there was pushback when it came to county authorities on that were frustrated with it. So we'll see where that appeals process happened. That's not something that we would necessarily consider as the planning versus, the agricultural use versus the energy consumption side. Honestly, we haven't quite figured out what the rules are yet because the board hasn't started yet, but that is, some of those considerations are going to come before us as well.
And I made that question because the question was that what this agency can do besides plans, but certainly if we come out with a plan that people are going to recognize as legitimate and where it is going in the future, maybe state overreach is not the answer to solving what they think are the problems versus what, this agency does in supporting local governments and counties can do to encourage our communities, our mayors to make the proper decisions, which we think we do. But in the case of, again, you just mentioned yourself, the solar initiative, that there's towns that, look forward to maybe having some property to develop affordable housing. And now they've been, the overreach is, no, if somebody wants to put a solar farm in there, they're going to do it. So again, we need this balance, and for this agency going forward, making recommendations that are solid recommendations. And maybe we also cross over the line as to, not crossing over the line, but over-regulation is not necessarily the answer either.
Agreed. I will say one of the other things though, and we talked about this on our prep call, that's a really opportunity for the mayors, is making sure that you have an understanding of the implication of a data center, the implication of a substation. Because to Mark's point, we have the resources here. It's getting them all out there and understanding what the connection is. And there is a lot of misinformation about data centers. And there's also there's a big drama right now in Chicago, close to where I live, in Lincoln Park, on a new substation going in that's got everybody very worked up. So I do think there is a responsibility of the mayors to making sure that their constituents really understand what these implications are, what their role is, and what impact those have on their constituents. So being, do you want to make sure that you have enough electricity that's available to you? Do you want to understand, like, a data center? I don't think anybody actually understands what a data center does, a regular person on the street. A lot of them know that it's bad and they think it's going to raise their costs, but they don't understand that they're interacting with that data center every minute of every day. And they want that too. So, I mean, I think there's a huge education component in all of this that's really necessary.
But in the world of misinformation, where do we go to find accurate information about data centers? Because, I mean, the problem is 20 people have different opinions, right? So as mayors or government officials, what is the the gold standard resource we go to get accurate information?
So that, we try to do the same thing with our staff as well, right? Because at Springfield, you're going to have everybody that's paid for around the rail to do their lobbying and things like that. So it's really looking at all those things that are coming before you and having those questions. But, I think with data centers, because of the huge growth, a data center is it's just a rebranding of a server farm. They're the same thing that we've just had around for decades. They're just a lot bigger right now. And with the AI, they're processing substantial more power. So I think one thing is understanding what type of data center is being proposed in your neighborhood. Dominion Energy, which is in Virginia, which is the data center corridor of the world, they have put together kind of 6 different categories for what they deem a data center to be. And that will go everything on what the ramp up is, on how much they're using it, what is their ability to curtail, all those kind of things. Those are things that you should be able to, ComEd pulls a lot of that stuff together with all the proposals that come to them. So I would say ComEd is one of your first choices if you're in the ComEd territory, or Ameren, which I guess you guys would all be ComEd up here. That would be your first area that I would go to really understand what the impact is, what the time frame is, and then what the usage is going to be and what their chances are of really locating here. Because what I understand is even with all this planning, most people only assume about 20% is really what's going to happen for all this data centers and all this projection that everyone is talking about.
Yeah, and I did, one of the kind of goals coming out of this was trying to provide direction on where we can collaborate and be more helpful. And that was spot on. We don't really have any sort of specific recommendations because everyone has this, different setup in terms of the town they manage, the land they have, the density, et cetera. So the best thing to do is really come to us early and often. And we can give you a sense of, back to that question on optimizing development. There could be farmland where great, it seems perfect for sun, but oh, by the way, there's no hosting capacity there. You need to build a super expensive and unsightly line extension. And so it doesn't really make sense.
It has its own local implications of a line extension.
Mayor Noak?
Right. That's right. So our recommendation, we are helpful. We can kind of give you a sense of what's it going to mean for this type of development. And then it can give you a quick sense of whether that's something that does seem like it's an effective use of limited resources and time, whether land, money, et cetera, or maybe it doesn't seem like it's going to fit with the opportunity there.
Chairman, before Mayor Noak, Mark, I just want your devil's advocate position on all this. Because I'm just curious, right? So what is your position on some of the things we brought up?
Well,
The two, what is the best thing we can do in the short term? I mean, as I hear you we have a critical mass problem right now. So as a planning agency, but also as a mayor, we have land, we have buildings. What can we do to help solve this capacity problem? Because it does sound like everybody agrees that it's a capacity or storage problem. And so I'm intrigued by that. That might be something that if I understand it better, I can get my hands on it and try to advocate for a quicker solution than a 20-year plan.
right. And I think you'd need your 20-year plans, and they take a long time to get right. So that's going to have to work its way through. I would say in the near term, a couple things, and this might be soft talk, but I've observed a lot of municipalities over the years. I think that to the extent the municipality can gain some internal expertise to understand and explain the process of how all this works to the residents, I think that'll deflate a lot of the concerns. I've been in a lot of public meetings for data centers and solar farms, and you're right, there's a lot of misinformation. But I think that for a lot of local governments, to be able to explain this is a PJM issue, this is a ComEd issue, there is a process here, no one's taking electricity from grandma, right? I think that if you can have some expertise that can communicate that, I think you've got lots of experts, you could share and pool that knowledge. And I think that then there can be a consistent message to the public. They want you to answer the question to the best of your ability. So I think that's a first step. The next step is I would work very closely with ComEd to understand what are the reliability standards within your community. You probably receive one report a year at least on the substations and outages and those types of things. I think that someone really needs to dig in and understand those. Take a look at the excellent free hosting maps that ComEd has, where you can zoom down to the street level and understand how much EV can be hosted here, how much solar can be hosted here. It's free. It's fantastic. And it's easily accessible. And then I think interacting with your ComEd representatives to understand what are the impacts of an expansion of a substation? Are they looking at non-wires alternatives? What projects in the multi-year grid plan are looking to be located in your community, and why? I think that's the main question, is why, right? And to the extent you can plug people into those answers, I think that's great. I think also working to the extent you can to facilitate easy deployment or easier deployments. So you probably know Edith Macra and the SolSmart and EV Ready and those types of programs that help unify and standardize interconnection process for solar. Which was mentioned earlier for warehouses and for homes, for EV charging, for batteries, I think is really going to become important. Yes, a lot of local authority was stripped away. in terms of zoning. I think you need to take a real close look at what you can do, what you're willing to do, and then build that into your own personal plan. Hey, we want this resiliency. We want this reliability. This is what we can do at the local level. We can make it easier for these resources to flow our direction. Last point is I would engage with the Commerce Commission. As was mentioned, there are a lot of processes and procedures going on. I think they need to be closely monitored. There was a report that came out in December called the Resource Adequacy Study that identified potential shortages in ComEd and Ameren during the latter part of the days in a hot July, as early as 2029, 2030, right? That's your focal point. You don't have to worry about 2 a.m. You got to worry about hot afternoon and evening in August, a couple years from now. So there's time, right? You got a runway. But I think that for local folks, you can't decide if there's going to be a power plant that opens or closes. You're going to wait 10 years before a transmission line comes in, right? It's just the reality. But if you can identify and help to clearly and simply, to the extent possible, explain what's happening and why, I think you're going to make life a lot easier, not only for yourself and your staff, but also for your residents, because this all happens magically. My contention has been for years that consumers, one, they think electricity should be free. And then secondly, they only pay attention to electricity 6 minutes a year. That's the 30 seconds it takes to open 12 monthly bills from the utility company and say, this is too expensive. That's all they really think about. And this is, as you can tell, very involved. So you're going to have to be the repository of that local voice of this is how it works and this is why, this is what we can do. That might not be very satisfactory, but I think those are material measures that can be taken.
So,
Mayor, if we can, we're getting down to the end. Can I get Mayor Noak on the line?
Sure.
We're getting down to
Thank
the
you.
last.
You know, yeah, thank you. One of the things I think as a planning agency we can do, on issues like with the data centers and, is, we have the resources. We can look at where various infrastructures all these different elements might come together the most logically. For instance, where might one site more rooftop solar? And put onto the grid. But at the same time, where are there potentially suitable locations for, battery storage in that proximity? And then also looking at the combination of where are we looking at water sources that may not be palatable water sources, but rather utilizing gray water sources. So where all those elements come together most logically. So we are actually looking at ways to, address many of these concerns and issues the most effectively. And as an agency, we have that data, or we can compile that data, and we can also compile some, ideas on best practices for the locals to look at in regards to best utilizing the areas where these things can come together the most effectively.
We're getting down to summary maybe, or
Lightning round.
Final last comment, because, this is actually a very stimulating conversation, and, the give and take. I'm a lawyer, I'm a litigator, so that's why I go back and forth. But I agree with Mayor Noak on this. I think what he didn't finish saying, and I'm sure he agrees, I think the solutions are local. You've got to give us how to do it. You can give us the roadmap. You can educate us. I've got tons, much more information now than I did an hour ago. But trying to do it at the state level, isn't going to work fast enough for the problem. But we are very agile at the local level if we know what we're doing. Right now, we don't know what we're doing, but I think once we figure it out, we can do it at the local level. And I think that's what Mayor Noak was indicating. And I think we've got a lot of potential to do that.
And just to be clear, I 100% agree with all of Mark's recommendations to you. And I will say on the water issue, there is one thing that the state did from an economic development. They passed a bill last year that does allow the use of gray water, non-potable water for industrial solutions. That just passed. They're finalizing the rules right now. So that's something that didn't come actually through this debate. It came through another situation, but that's another thing for you guys to be aware of. But Mark's exactly right. I think knowing what you're going to need in your community, knowing what your community wants to plan for, and then figuring out where that interacts with the state, that's where the opportunity is. And at least us at the ICC, we're happy to talk to folks and want to engage more on these things because we just have more and more coming before us. We don't want to live in a vacuum either. And just, I will tell you, when you talk about Springfield, like they just pass a bill and then we're supposed to figure it out. So I'm appreciative of the implementation side.
Yeah, I think this gray water issue as it relates to all of this is a new dynamic that this agency, as well as we talk about water resources, this is an emerging dynamic that I think is key. And, really doing an analysis of where this is practical to be utilized, and then giving the locals the tools, as my colleague said. This is about giving the locals the tools to show where this is practical and how it can be utilized. And, introducing that element into this kind of changes the field a little bit.
Okay, we got 2 minutes to summarize.
Yep.
What's going on?
Just your headline takeaway, because I would love to moderate another panel, but I'm worried if we go over, Mayor Bennett's going to veto that. Your headline statement of what this board should walk away from today's conversation with.
We
Desi,
look forward to another time. I mean, this has obviously been very informational and conversational. We would more than happy to have him come back. Yeah, absolutely.
Desi, what's your headline for this board to walk away with for today?
Yeah, and definitely we'd love to continue these conversations. I think there's so much wealth of knowledge that we have that, I'd love to learn from what all your needs are. I think the biggest thing is investing in scale-up technology. That's how you get job creation. That's how you get grid modernization. That's how you get cheaper energy in the long term. And domestic manufacturing, secure supply chains. And by domestic, I mean in your communities. I'd love to have more microgrids, more like decentralized, smaller scale so that, your local community has that capacity. And I think, we can do that. We'd love to do that. We just need some support, locally.
Desi did offer me a tour of their facility. So anybody wants to join me for that experience, happy to do it.
Come over.
Commissioner, your headline to take away?
I mean, it's all about what you guys have already talked about. It's about engagement. It's about identifying what your community needs and then meeting with ComEd and meeting with us if need be and talking through or meeting with the water agencies to figure out what your needs are. We all want to work collaboratively together and we all understand that there is a balance between what our environmental goals and what our economic development goals. That's something that comes before us all the time and we want to have those discussions. And I at least like to talk to people. So you're welcome. I'm happy to do it at any time.
Andy, what's your headline takeaway?
Yep. No, I will not disagree at all. The collaborate and engage is sort of what I kept coming back to. We are here to help, and we probably get as close to that local support that you're looking for. We see all of it, all the customers, and we have to serve them all. I also want to reinforce, the challenges are real, but Illinois really is in a good place. We've got, as mentioned, top reliability, very competitive rates, especially for a large metropolitan area that does attract development. But lots needs to be done, and affordability is the challenges are real. So we're going to have to prioritize, and the best way to do that is to engage with you all and figure out truly what really matters to you and what will work the best. So that's those are my takeaways.
Mark, since the commissioner branded you as the person who got everyone's attention, bring us home.
I think you are going to be the most effective advocates for your residents. Bar none. You'll get phone calls back from anybody. You'll get the information you need. You just have to ask for it. Ask for it the right way, and then you got to process it. But I really think you are locally agile and able to help this move along. I sincerely believe that. I'm not just saying it because of who the audience is. You're the advocates. You can really help move this forward. You could put your own flair on it. You can adjust the direction, but you got to find a compass and set your course. So to the extent you can do that, I think that's great.
Andy, Stacy, Desi, Mark, thank you all so much for this dynamic conversation, sharing your expertise with us. And as the chair said, we will be continuing these conversations.
Thank you, Count. Again, panel, thank you very much. Legislative update, there is none. As indicated, they are all busy down in Springfield, of which I've seen them down there being busy. So we'll move on to other business. Is there any other business for the, go ahead. Ian.
As a jump off point for this particular activity, which I always enjoy, Can we ensure that the panel has a perspective of like a community perspective or like a different POV so that we can get, because in the conversation, we didn't talk at all about the environmental justice implications. We didn't talk about the land use implications, the vulnerable communities. That wasn't covered at all. And I think that that doesn't paint the whole picture, and it doesn't give us the whole information. It doesn't give people watching the whole information. And I want to make sure we have diverse perspectives kind of all coming in, and so that we can engage with that, because it's kind of hard to engage with a homogeneous viewpoint. And so that would be just, and that goes for panels or any type of activity. Would love to see various types of POV, and then also like the social, political, and social demographic information that would help us understand the full context of a story.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end, that was the final message was engaging with the community and hearing from the community what the needs are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think too, you'll see as we bring back to next month, we've also been doing a lot of local insights panels as well to really hear from people on the ground. So, but I hear you and I take your note. So we'll
Cool.
make sure
But even with the experts, I mean, because as CMAP, we have plans, right? We have plans in which we talk about our values. And so like, even with the panel of experts, if they could refer back to those values and like ground them, I think that that would be really helpful to remind us what we're supposed to be doing here.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Is he in?
Yes, Garland.
Garland, go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Bennett. It's Garland. And Garland, I'm formerly of Elmwood Park in Des Plaines, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How's everybody doing in the Chicagoland area at CMAP?
We're doing great, Garland. Hope you are too.
Yeah, I was listening into it, and I think one day you need to maybe have the ADA also talk about this too, because they have no idea about it. So how to make sure that the ADA get involved in it too, and make sure to communicate with them so that they really have a clear understanding of it, because they really don't have a clue on what's going on, and then how to be extremely well prepared for it, because they feel like they're out of touch. So I just want y'all to make sure that the ADA knows about this, and maybe you should do a presentation to it so that they can understand what suggestions they could help out with y'all, because I think the time is now for them, so they won't be disconnected, because they feel like how can we get involved in it too, because there's nobody ever talked to them about it. So maybe we need from all different languages to make sure how they're well prepared for it.
That's a great suggestion, Garland. Thank you.
Yeah, and also just want to give you the heads up too. My wife is going to have surgery on May 27th. Mark your calendar. And they said it might be thyroid problems, especially with her lower back problems. So I just want to give you all a heads up on that too.
Thanks, Garland. Garland, our certainly our thoughts are with her. So,
All right.
thanks, Garland.
All right. Talk to you again.
All right. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I will entertain the executive. Before I said the executive committee will not be meeting because we don't have a quorum. So with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Move to second, all in favor, signify use the matter. Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
We'll see you on May 10th. May 10th. June 10th. June 10th. June 10th, not May.
So
We
last
passed
meeting
that.
too.